Checkity check, check, check.
Man, two ads. We're gonna have a 2-hour show. Man, look at the size of this ad.
Well, there's a lot of line items, but not a lot of information.
Oh crap! And I don't have it this week in history. Or a show closing spectacular. Today is just like flown by.
Well, yeah, I'm still wearing my church clothes. I've been doing stuff all day. I just kind of rolled in.
Let me see. So this is for the 27th through the 2nd. See if I've got anything. Darn it. Got stuff for next week. Had more stuff for last week.
Yeah, and we don't obviously have a topic at all. So just news it. I kept thinking of stuff I wanted to talk about, but none of it really seemed, like we'll just do news.
Well, and there was a lot of news this week. I mean, good news. Like because last week it was like one or two stories that I kind of was interested. There's some stories I came across I didn't even put in here.
Yeah, some good stuff here. Good fodder. All right, let me know when you're ready.
Okay, hold on. I'm trying to. There's got to be something in here.
I think I bought this air conditioner here in 2012, and I don't use it a lot, once or twice a week, but for it to take that long in the humid air of both North Texas and North Georgia to fill up, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Okay, here we go. I guess let me make sure this is in the right time period. Yes. Okay, where is... Give me... Sorry, I really have been working, I promise. Gonna have to do a new This Week in History document because it's taken too long to scroll through all the pages here. 08/28/2004.
I think I've decided to take my Sound and Fury feed that has just been lying dormant and use that as an outlet for movie reviews. Based on what we're going to talk about here in a little bit. There are a lot of reviews of a lot of movies, but I feel that they're underserving a market, and I don't know that I don't know that thousands of people would care what I think about a movie, and I don't see movies every week. I'm not going to review every movie unless I start getting like free passes and stuff. But I really think that I could, we've talked about movies a lot, and we've done reviews on this show a lot. I think I'm going to sort of reactivate that feed for movie reviews, starting with this one we're going to talk about tonight.
Oh yeah, I want to see that one. So, but don't worry about spoiler reviews because I already know what it's about.
Right? Yeah, you really can't spoil this one.
Yeah, and of course, we'll have to be a little careful on how we do it because, I wonder. I don't know what our audience makeup is: percent Christian versus atheist, all that kind of stuff.
I don't know. I really don't. I've judging from the feedback, I get sort of 60-40, 60%, if not overt Christian, at least, I believe in a higher power, and another 40%, I don't agree with any of that, but I respect your rights to. I haven't had any just flat up atheist trolls in my mailbox.
All right, so I will see if I can come up with on the fly a show closing spectacular. So
Okay.
I guess I'll be ready.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so I am recording now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Linux episode 203. There's not a title to this one. Recorded August 30th. I don't have a title. I should put a title on there. Where's the big R? Why did that big R pop in there?
I don't know. Did you do that?
I don't think so. Let's see. Give me a title.
See. I got nothing. No, that's what I call news.
We used I got nothing already.
Yeah.
Or no, I just go with that.
Yeah. I don't. That could become a joke. I've got nothing one. I've got nothing two.
There we go. The show with no name. I've been through the desert. All right. One more time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Linux episode 203, the show with no name, recorded August 30th, 2015, and brought to you by Element OP Productions, elementop.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Linux show that's not about Linux, but about life in the context of Linux. I am your host, Mark, the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockerel, and joining me this week is Seth, the GUI Kid Anderson, and he alone is all the co-host we need tonight. Hello, Seth.
Hello, Mark, and welcome to all of the awesomely spectacular Element OP faithful who grace us with their presence on an ongoing basis.
I'm not sure if Chris mentioned it on the show last week, or just before and after, but he's moving, and it was the internet transition, right? We're going to shut it off at this address and turn it on at this address, and because no internet company has ever gotten that right, he is sans internet tonight, and therefore shall not be joining us. Let's face it, moving sucks every time it's tried, and trying to do a podcast in the middle of a move just would have been a Herculean effort. So we're fine with him not being here.
Yeah, moving plus buying a house plus moving out of your house with a family, all of those multiply the moving experience. So yeah, the fact that he misses a week, it's kind of cool if it's only 1 week. So.
All right. So I wanted to mention, you guys, we talk about things that we like on here a lot. And I am right in the middle, pretty close to in the middle. Let me look right now to be mathematically accurate, because that's the kind of audience we have. No, I'm not quite. I'm 13 hours and 40 minutes into a 32-hour audiobook. So just over 1/3 of the way through. A book called Seven Eves. It's a one-word palindrome, 7 and then 7 spelled backwards with one N. It's by Neal Stephenson. I don't remember where I heard about it, but it was a book recommended by something. And it's fascinating. In the first chapter, I love sci-fi books that start this way. First chapter of the book, the moon explodes. And they spend about 4 paragraphs trying to explain why the moon might have exploded before they get down to the fact that, holy crap, the moon just exploded. And so as a result of the moon exploding, it's going to start raining chunks of debris down on the earth in a couple of years' time. And it will be an event large enough to wipe out not only all life on Earth, but all geological features on Earth, as in boil the oceans, flatten the mountains, because, you get something roughly 1/10 the size of the planet breaking up into billions of pieces and falling at orbital speeds onto the planet. So the Earth has right around the 2 years. No spoilers here. This is like the first chapter of the book. 2 years to get off the planet. And if you enjoy the Martian, right, like I did, the engineering and the figuring things out. Now Neal Stephenson takes some liberties with technology. He doesn't set a date of this, but there's some technology that he invented that doesn't quite exist in the world today, but most of it is pretty well grounded in real science. And it's been really enjoyable. It's been a fun engineering trick for me to try to keep up with this. And how are we going to get as much of the population as possible into space when currently we have like 12 astronauts on the International Space Station, and that's the best we can do. So just a recommendation to you if you want to check it out, elementopie.com/audible. You can get the audio book. If you sign up for the book a month, you can get this book for free. If you like it, keep it, and another book will come and you'll get charged. I think it's $14. If you don't like it, cancel it. This book is still yours. So check it out, Seven Eves. Are you familiar with it at all, Seth?
I have never heard of it, and I am looking it up online to see if it's some. I could see me buying this book. I might have to look into it. I've kind of taken a break from reading because I did so much reading for a protracted period of time there. So I'm kind of just giving that a little break and kicking up some podcasts.
Yeah. So I don't even know. There wasn't really a review. It was a recommendation. That's what we'll call it. So if you're looking for, it's a long book. I assume if it's 30 hours audio, it's probably, at least 12 to 15 hours reading pace. So it's a weekend book if you want to pick it up. But I recommend it. It's available in ebook format as well as I'm sure you can get it on Dead Tree Edition. But Seven Eves, Neal Stephenson.
Yes, you can do the Dead Tree Edition.
Because I know that's the only way you like to read books.
I do, because I'm too visual to enjoy the listening to a long protracted story. It's cool for learning something, but there's got to be something more for the story. If somebody were telling it to me and there were like the gesticulations that went with it, maybe, but it's missing something for me. But that's personal opinion.
And you're by no means in the minority. Most book lovers love books more than they love stories, or as much as they love stories.
Right.
I'm a story lover, not a book lover. So you have here in the notes, Seth, that you were able to fail up. What does that mean?
Yeah, well, we talked before about when I lost my other job and I started this one. There was a 4-week thing. Well, I had got something in the mail last week saying that my unemployment was going to be, I was approved, but it was going to be $0 a week because of the severance I had gotten. And so I was like, well, great, no unemployment, but I have my job, whatever, I'm good. And then this week in the mail, one day I got a letter saying, oh, we've approved your amount, even though you had this other pay. And then the next day I received my money in the mail. So for my 4-week vacation, I received 5 weeks worth of pay. And, and I'm working in a job at almost the exact same pay, very comparable. So, I failed and lost my job, but I fell up. So, at this rate, I need to get fired. I'm just going to see if I can get fired once or twice a month.
Yeah. You could work your way into a 6-figure salary if you get fired every 2 months.
Yeah. So it was kind of cool, so I went from having, I was going to have just a little bit of money left over before I started getting my paychecks. And now all of a sudden it's truly like I got a bonus or something, because I have, granted it's a debit card, but I'm using my debit card like I used to use my credit card. So when I have to pay that bill, I'm going to have money left over. So if you're going to fail in life, try to fail up, people. That's the way to do it.
All right. That's good stuff. One other thing I wanted to talk about is not an audiobook. And I recognize that a certain segment of my audience isn't going to care about what I have to say now, but another certain segment is. And that's one of the things that I like to do on the show is movie reviews. I took my family to see War Room yesterday. If you're not familiar with the Kendrick brothers, they Stephen and Alex Kendrick started making movies at a church in South Georgia as a ministry of that church. Probably 10 years ago. They've made 5 movies, starting with Flywheel. Facing the Giants got some theater time. You might have heard of that one. Fireproof, starring Kirk Cameron, got a little more. And the one that they're probably most known for was Courageous. Came out a couple of years ago. Tony Dungy of the NFL was big in promoting that one. And this one is their biggest budget film yet, War Room. So right off the bat, it is a religious show. It's a faith-based film. And the war that they're talking about is the spiritual warfare of prayer. So I've read a lot of reviews, not a lot. There are only, like, you go to IMDb, there are 5 or 6 reviews on there, because it's a small release, and it's a church movie. It's made for church groups, right? And our church rented out a theater and went to see it. And there's a place for that. Not everything has to be Avengers. Not everything has to be major motion picture. But what got me was a lot of the reviews I read weren't about the movie. They didn't comment on the acting or the lighting or the dialogue. They commented on the substance, right? So because they didn't agree with the spiritual aspects of the movie, they panned the movie. Or vice versa, because they liked the spiritual message of the movie, they gave it 10 stars. It was the perfect movie. Neither of those is an appropriate response to this movie. Now, I admit this is not really the appropriate place for a review of this movie in the Linux podcast. It's not about Linux, but I'm going to do it anyway. So fast forward 5 or 6 minutes if you're not interested in this. But I just wanted to tell you this: the Kendrick brothers, they have a style, and that style is heavy-handed and preachy, and with a good bit of just cheese to it. It's their dialogue is hokey, but then again, so was George Lucas's, and he did just fine. But it's their style, it's their signature, so it's got their signature all over it. But it's their biggest budget. You could tell Flywheel, their first movie, and I own all their movies and I enjoy them. And one of the things that I commented to my wife was, I took the whole family to see the movie yesterday, and as we were getting ready for bed last night, I said, when was the last time that I took the whole family to a movie that didn't have cartoon characters or puppets in it? And we had to go back to Annie in December. So it's been 9 months since I was able to take my kids to a movie that had humans in it. So that's a win in my book right there, that it even exists. Even if it's not very good, it was an outlet for my family that has not existed in the past. I need to make a quick stop here. Hold on. It started doing that clicking thing early.
Ruh-roh.
So get just that aside. That for my, if you're now, I have a fairly high standard. I've talked about that, I'm pretty sure, on this show before. I want to protect my children's respect for life and low tolerance for human suffering. I think that those are things that need to be guarded. When you get older, you begin to accept, you become inured to human suffering. You become callous to it, and through a number of ways, just through living. Right? You live your life and you see people suffer. You see people die. I believe as a parent, it's my job to nurture that as long as possible, knowing that whenever it happens, their innocence will be robbed of them too soon already. So I think that it's my job as a parent not to shelter them from the realities of the world, but not to rub suffering in their face either. So they have not seen any of the Marvel movies except they saw the Thor movie, the first Thor movie on TV, edited for television, and that's it. Because there's a lot of pain and suffering in that. They haven't seen a lot of movies that a lot of people take their 3-year-olds to, and I'm not making a judgment on that. You just parent your children differently than I parent my children. But this was a movie that I could take all 3 of my kids, my whole family of 5 to, including the 6-year-old. And know that they were going to be in a safe environment, and that there weren't going to have to be things that I didn't want my children to see. That's a win for me right there. Seth, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think that's really cool. I like the way that you're into the moviness of movies, and you can kind of go beyond the story and you have an eye for that. For me, that's very difficult to do because I'm a suspend disbelief as much as possible and let's just get into the story. But a couple of questions I would have, like, to me, one of the most famous, like, quote unquote Christian film recently was God's Not Dead. Would you say this was a better, and again, not judging the content because you either agree with it or you don't, but would you say this is a better movie than that? Because while I liked the story, and when I was telling somebody about it, I was like, there's a saying that actors use lies to tell the truth, and in that sense they did a good job telling the truth of the story, but as a movie it wasn't a good movie. Was this a better movie than that?
And I think that the Kendrick brothers are good at telling stories.
Right.
And as I've said, they're heavy-handed and preachy, but for them, they're parables or sermons.
Right.
And so when I go to a Kendrick brothers movie, I expect to get a sermon. And I would love to send them a page of the dictionary with the definition of subtlety circled, because apparently they don't know what that is.
Right.
And I would like to see some more subtlety in their movies, but they begin straight from the beginning to the end, pounding you with their message in all of their movies. So that aside, yes, I think it was a really enjoyable movie, and it stands up as a movie. Like I said, they've got some big budget this time. There were, things like dolly shots they've never had in any of their movies before. That's that move that you see all the time where the camera slides gently from one side to the other, or even around a dolly. Those didn't exist. Everything they'd done before was either hand camera work or in Flywheel. It was clear that they had a camera to shoot that whole film on. And so they would do a shot with one person's perspective, flip the camera onto the other person's perspective. This one was much more production. The lighting, one of the things I noticed in movies, was much better. They had some budget. They had some better scenes. The acting, none of their people are big actors. So you're not getting a Tom Hanks quality performance. You're not getting, a Meryl Streep quality performance. You're getting, you're getting writers. Like the main character is a writer in real life. That's her real job, and she's acting. One of the ladies who Beth Moore is, she does women's conferences and stuff, and they really punched up her involvement in this. She was only in the movie for like 4 minutes, but it was obvious that she's not an actress. So there's a lot of that. You have to just accept that. But again, I would say the same thing about all 6 of the Star Wars movies. Yes, I just did admit that there were 6 of them. They had bad actors, young actors, and you just people will single out on that. But I think it was a good movie. The story developed in a predictable way. Nothing surprised me. But again, I can say that about most movies that I go to. And so I just enjoy it. So if you're interested in Christian-based, faith-based, spiritual movies, then you will go in already liking the message. And there's nothing production-wise that's going to turn you off. God's Not Dead, I agree with you, Seth. There were times when I went there wanting to like the film, but it was so ham-handedly done in some places that it took you out of the film.
Right.
And the Provident Films crew, they've risen above that. That hasn't been true for all of their movies. Another movie that they teamed up with, it's a different production company, I can't remember now, but Mom's Not Out is a Christian comedy about a preacher's wife who goes out on the town has a girls' night, and hilarity ensues. And that's another one where it's, you've got a message that you're trying to give, and so it's a sermon, but it's a sermon delivered in such a way that it's entertaining and enjoyable. So if you read all these reviews of War Room, you may not even be familiar with it because it was such a limited release. I mean, don't let the negative reviews tell you that it's a bad movie, and don't let the glowing reviews tell you that it's an excellent work of art. It is neither. On a scale of 10, it's a good 7. It's a passing grade, but it's not stellar. But you can enjoy it, and you can take your kids to it, and the kind of conversations you'll be having afterwards of this movie are the kinds of conversations I want to have with my kids. And I can't say that about a lot of movies. It's a largely, almost exclusively African American cast. I have to say African American. Some of them may be Canadian. I don't know. But and in some places I think they over cliche that. Some of the characters are caricatures. But
again, you can say that
right
in pretty much any movie or television show. There was a TV show, some friends of mine had DVR'd last night, and it was and they did the premiere was 2 episodes linked together, so it was a 1-hour comedy. Oh my gosh, it was just it was a 1-hour cliche caricature. And I was like, I don't know if I want to watch that. So
one of the main characters, Miss Cleo, is the archetypal black grandma church lady. And her dialogue comes straight out of a church service through the whole movie. She talks through the whole movie like she's giving a sermon. And that's, it's I really think at this point it's a style that these people have chosen to do rather than a misgiving or a mistake. It's the way they've chosen to do it. But I've talked with some of my black friends who spend their time in black churches. Like, no, I know that lady. She goes to church with me every Sunday. I know her. So it's an archetype, it's a stereotype, but every stereotype has truth in it.
Right.
Okay, so that's all I had to say about that. Probably more than I should have said, but I wanted to get that out there because I just don't think that there are many people doing this particular movie justice in the reviews. They either love the message or hate the message and judge the movie based on it. This is a decent movie. That's the best I can say for it. It's not great. It's not terrible. In fact, I would put it on about the same scale as Annie, the last movie I saw with my kids, or Dolphin Tale 2, which last September was the last movie I saw with my kids that didn't have puppets or cartoon characters in it. There's such a dearth of safe, in my opinion, movies for kids out there, and all of them are mediocre movies. And I don't know what the reason for that is. Maybe there's the constraints you put on there to make a guy like me happy can only be a mediocre movie. The animated people, they make stellar movies. The puppet people, they make really good movies. The live action, they're all like, 7 or 8 out of 10. They're all just okay movies.
Yeah, I went and saw Hitman Agent 47. Of course, I don't have kids, but that would not be a movie I would take, a preschooler to. But yet I saw preschoolers in the theater, yes. And I'm like thinking, why would you take a 4 or 5 year old movie or kid to see this movie? Again, I knew what I was going to get going in there, and it was, some of the action was cool, and of course some of the fights were cool, but it wasn't a great movie, but it wasn't a bad movie. It was a decent movie. But again, that's not the kind of movie I would want to take my 4-year-old little girl. And, in the conversations after that, Daddy, why did they shoot him in the head after shooting him in the chest? Why did they knock that guy off a bridge? And, how come they were shooting that old man? And I'm just like, I don't know. But so, yeah. Throw in some random societal laments here.
Yeah. And I recognize that I'm very conservative about that sort of thing. And some of my friends that go to the same church with me take their kids to see these movies that I consider entirely inappropriate for children. And when I talk, like, for example, I went to see Age of Ultron with my wife on a date night, and the kids, they wanted to see it because they'd seen the commercials, and some of their friends at school wanted to see it. And I tell them, it's not a bad movie. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't want you to think this is a bad movie so I can't see it. It's just not a kid movie. And you're a kid. You're not ready yet. And they understand that, and they trust me as their parent to make that decision for them, because over the last, my oldest is 12, my youngest is 6. Over the last decade, I have built that trust with them. When there have been times they've gone to their neighbor's house and they've watched, popped a DVD in of a movie that I hadn't let them watch, and they've come back and said, yeah, I didn't enjoy that. I'm not ready for that. So, it's just, there's a whole list of things that I'm really anxious to show my kids when they get old enough, but they're just not there yet. The ratings mean something, people. PG-13, I really honestly believe that PG-13 is probably the most accurate rating of all of them, because most of those movies are appropriate for your average 13-year-old. There are mature themes there that a 13-year-old can begin to process. A 5-year-old cannot. They do not have the mental capacity to process those themes.
And sometimes it's not a matter of mental capacity, it's emotional capacity.
Right.
You have to be careful. Are you saying my kid's not smart enough to? No, we're not. We're just
I'm saying the brain is not developed yet.
Right. So
it's not a matter of sociology. It's not a matter of spirituality. It is a matter of biology. Their brain is simply not developed enough yet to emotionally or intellectually process some of these things. And you are damaging them when you take them to it. There's my preachiness.
Hey, and ironically enough, this is something that both you and I can speak to with our counseling majors.
Yes.
So, so we know a little bit about what we're talking about here, people, unlike, Linux and technology in general.
That's the one thing I'm actually trained to know about. All right, so moving on to, we don't have any listener feedback, but Seth wanted to point out that we were so far ahead of the curve that more than 70 or almost 70 episodes ago, we covered what the IDGA News is just now getting to. IDGA Answers, excuse me.
Yeah, this is one of those kind of answer websites that seeks to become what Yahoo Answers used to be. And somebody posed the question, how important is Linus Torvald to Linux at this stage? And, and of course, somebody answered it. And I'm like thinking, dude, we were so on top of this. A year and a half ago, we not only asked the question, but we discussed it on air in depth. So way to go, world. Way to ride our coattails.
Yeah, and the person who answered it quotes an IT World article, Will Linux Survive the Death of Linus Torvalds?
And again, that came out after our article as well. So, I mean, they're just slow. They're not quite up to our standards yet.
Not everybody can be as breaking as we are.
Right.
Breaking news. So here's something that I have lamented many times, that there is not yet a solid, dependable, professional grade video editor in Linux. There have been a lot of people who have been saying that theirs is going to be the next one, and here's another one saying that they're going to be the next one.
Well, this is a Softpedia review of a program called Shortcut.
Shotcut.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We all do that. You see a word and you read what you want that word to be once, and then for the rest of your life, when you see that, you think the wrong word. Like, for example, ramen noodles, I used to pronounce Romulan. So there's no L in it, but they were Romulan noodles to me. So yes, I've been a Star Trek geek since I was a little kid. But Shotcut, so I haven't tried it because I don't edit video. I'm not an audio video kind of guy, but this author seemed to think it was a pretty good. And he's like, it's good in some ways, it's bad in others, and he gives it a 4 out of 5. Some things he gave a 5, and other things he gave a 3. So again, it's not a super duper editor, but if you're looking for a video editor in Linux, give Shotcut a try and let us know what you think.
What I think is missing, I mean, we have the high-end one, right? We have Cinelera, which is actually being used on movie sets and for movies. But what we don't have is Movie Maker for Windows or iMovie for the Mac. We don't have the point and click, drag and drop, make a movie and share it with your friends on Linux. Now, those tools are moving online, so I think that's going to matter less in the future. But it still does matter right now, and it is a knock against Linux on the desktop. So hopefully Shotcut can help fill that in. I'll check it out after the show, and we'll see what we find out. Next up, a domain hijacking spear phishing plot had all the technology in place, but good old-fashioned tinfoil hat foiled it.
Yes. So, and again, this guy was I'm sorry, I don't know why, but somehow I closed out my window, and so I'm opening it and was vamping for time, and my vamping skills are lacking. But he received a email that looked very real, and if you go to this Ars Technica article, it shows he kind of took a screenshot of it and some things. And again, it's not perfect, but because of some issues he had had previously, he was all ready to click on it until he looked and went, uh-oh. So, and he has his filters set up, spam filters, all of that. It had made it past everything because this wasn't just a generic spam email. This was like some targeted spear phishing, and but he was tinfoil hat enough to go, I don't think so. And then he did some investigation and found out that it was somebody trying to hijack his domain, and by the time he was going to sandbox it and report it, the hosting company had already suspended it and stuff. So, so just, and there's, the article starts off that, and it says, as the old joke goes, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that everybody isn't out to get you. So, sometimes when you're dealing with security, there is no greater security tool than your brain. But at the same token, there's no greater security weakness than your brain too. So you've got a brain, use it, and that you should do maybe decent.
All right. And next up, some good news for Ubuntu Linux, which kind of needs some good news. Ubuntu dominates Amazon in the cloud, which is, when you think cloud computing, you think Amazon, right?
Yeah. So this company, and this article is on ZDNet, so if you want to go check it out, but they did their kind of a state of cloud infrastructure computing, and Amazon Web Services dominates the public cloud with a 57% market share. Second place is the Azure Infrastructure as a Service with 12%. And so Cloud Market's latest analysis of operating system on Amazon's cloud says that Ubuntu has the most with approximately 135,000. And its second place is Amazon's version of Linux at 54,000. Windows, and this is, I'm surprised that Windows was in third place so far down the line at 17,000. And fourth and fifth is CentOS and Red Hat for a combined. Golly, man, I've forgotten how to talk, with a combined 14,000. So Red Hat and CentOS combined have roughly 1/10 the number that Ubuntu does.
So this is on Amazon's virtual cloud hosting system, where they offer their own OS and people aren't using it. So they're using the Amazon cloud, but they're running, by and large, Ubuntu in the cloud.
Yeah, and it was just like, and again, they're the largest one. They have over half of the market, and Ubuntu has over half of their market. So if Ubuntu isn't used anywhere else, it's used at like 30% of cloud services.
And Seth didn't know this, but when he put this article in there, he gave me the perfect lead-in to tell you about a new sponsor for the Linux, Everyday Linux podcast. That is DigitalOcean, which is a cloud hosting service provider. And DigitalOcean contacted me a few weeks ago and said, hey, we'd like to advertise on your show. And I wrote back and said, I appreciate the interest, but I don't take advertising from products that I don't know and companies that I don't believe in. And they said, great, here's a free month. Go figure out if you believe in it. So I loaded up a Droplet, what they call their virtual machines, in DigitalOcean. I used the account that they gave me and spent an entire Saturday, probably 6 hours, making and breaking VMs and just really trying to be dumb about it, and trying to spin things up in the wrong way and trying to make things not work. And like so many other systems, you get your own server. It is a virtual server that you own, and yes, you can host it. They don't protect you in the way that some other shared hosted things where you just have a folder in their server. So there is that, but it also gives you the ultimate control. You can do whatever you want. You can put your own OS on there. Ubuntu is one of the options. They also have Fedora. They have CentOS. They have FreeBSD available, all available as a one-click. But you don't have to do any of those, right? You can hook up to it if you want and put whatever OS you want on it because it's your server. So I spent, like I said, several hours pounding on it, and I got to say, I am super, super impressed. And I'm not easy to impress. I tend to be pretty cranky about these sort of things. DigitalOcean servers, everything, it's 100% SSD based. So all of their servers are lightning fast, and because they're based on SSD servers, they all have a gigabit network infrastructure. So each droplet that you create has a gigabit NIC in it, virtual NIC. They're based on KVM's platform. So if you're a Linux guy and you've done any virtual hosting, you know that KVM is sort of the darling virtualizer right now, hypervisor. And it gives you raw access directly to the hardware, not like running VirtualBox or VMware, where you only get a software machine. You're actually running on the bare metal, but in a virtualized environment. They build their machines on powerful hex core machines with ECC RAM. And as I said earlier, everything is SSD storage. They have an API if you're just interested in developing and you need a server to store your stuff and you're not really interested in interacting with the server in that way. They have a full API directly for developers. They provide IPv6 support. Not that anybody cares right now, but they will. But one of my favorite things about it was the one-click application. So you want to start set up a machine with Ubuntu and Apache and MySQL and PHP and throw a Drupal on it. That can take some time. Or you can use the one-click setup button and click Drupal, and 55 seconds later you're set. I'm not kidding. I timed it. They say that their servers will spin up in less than a minute. They're not kidding. 55 seconds it took me to go from scratch to logging in to my Drupal. That's crazy. And then I went to tried their support. Okay, I'm a total noob. I don't know how to do anything. I'm going to go to their support, and I'm going to type in this noob question. And I found intricate, detailed, and correct support documentation on their website on how to do every little thing. So if you don't know how to set up a bind service and you need to do that, there's instructions on how to do that. You don't know how to tweak Samba or Apache, whatever you need to do, they have documentation right there on the side. It's not just, here's your server, good luck, go Googling. They actually support your people. I was just, like I said, I'm really impressed with them. And I'm so happy that they're choosing to support this podcast, and I'm happy to support them. So the thing that I'm the thing that interests me heavily, let's not forget the very first podcast I ever did was called the Tightwad Tech. It's got to be affordable. So right now, through another hosting provider, I'm doing shared hosting with a dedicated IP address, a backup service, and a couple little add-ons. And I just paid the bill this month, and it was $230-ish for the year. So and that's just getting a piece of their server, just shared hosting. For DigitalOcean, they have several different models. Their cheapest one that you can go is $5 a month. $5 a month. You get half a gig of RAM, 512 megs of RAM, a single core processor, a 20 gig SSD, and a terabyte a month of data transfer. So if you got a small project, that's fine for $5 a month. In fact, I could probably run my website on that box. It might be a little slow due to the RAM, and we get some stuff in, but that's pretty cheap. But the one that I think most people are going to use is the $10 a month service. It's you get a
hey Mark.
Yes.
Before you go on, I just want to interject here a little bit. Some people might be turned off. 512 megs of RAM, that's nothing. But you have to remember,
for a server, it's fine.
Yeah. Because you aren't even like a do everything server. You're doing like a web development or website server that is very specific in what it's going to do. So it doesn't have to have the RAM to support dozens of things that you might want to do in the future. It only has to have RAM to do what you're telling it to do. So 512, again, you wouldn't want to try to run a Google server off of 512 megs of RAM. But if you're going to set up a server because you want to, learn how to code a web page on your own, or you want something that's going to persist outside of trainings that you're doing, plenty of that. If you want to host a blog outside of Facebook because you don't like their privacy policies, or data, who owns what data, then again, that is more than enough for something like
right.
that.
And so this next step up, $10 a month, gets you a gig of RAM and 30 gigs of hard drive space and 2 terabytes of transfer. 2 terabytes is a lot, right? Our podcast running, thousands of listeners downloading a file average of 100 megs, we could burn through that in a month. But you running, your blog or your e-commerce site, you're not likely to burn through that in a month. And I haven't gone through and seen, but it's not like they cut you off after 2 terabytes. They just start charging you a little more, or maybe they move you to the next tier. I'm not sure. I'd have to check on that. Then they go $20 a month, $40, all the way up to the $80 a month thing, where you get 8 gigs of RAM, a quad core processor, 80 gigs of storage, and 5 terabytes of transfer. So they've got stuff that can handle whatever you want to throw at it at reasonable prices. They're more expensive than shared hosting, but it's more product than shared hosting. And if you sign up and use the code Everyday Linux when you sign up, or use the link on our website, elementop.com/DigitalOcean, you get a $10 credit. So if you get the $10 a month package and a $10 credit, you get a free month to try it out. You don't like it? Cancel it, walk away. You use a $5 product, you got $2 free. So as soon as you sign up and use that code, they throw $10 credit into your account, and you can save you half off your first month if you do the $20 one, or get you 2 months if you do the $5 one. So this is literally risk-free trials. So just on a lark, I wanted to see what happened. I went to the 512 meg one, the $5 one, and I typed in, I put Fedora on it, because why not? I'm playing with it. And I typed in yum install GNOME-desktop. So I turned it into a full GUI machine with 512 megs of RAM. Now, that's over 1,000 packages downloaded over the internet. And I probably burned through a fairly significant chunk of my 1 terabyte of transfer doing that. But you know how long it took? It took about 6 minutes. That blew me away. It took about 6 minutes from the time I entered that command to the time I was attempting to log in to the GUI. I say attempting because you can't run a GUI on 512s of megs of RAM on Fedora. It just didn't work. It tried. It gave it its best guess. But you know what? I deleted that. I started over with the 1 gig one, did the same thing, logged in, and it was fine. So you could actually get a GUI running in like 10 minutes. And it just, I know there are other services like that, but I've never seen anybody as complete and as full and as high performance as DigitalOcean, and I'm glad to have them on the show. elementop.com/DigitalOcean. Use the code EverydayLinux when you sign up. All right, back to the news.
Mark, how do you know I didn't put that in there on purpose?
Because you didn't know that we were doing this ad.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll give that to you.
I had told the guys that we had a new sponsor coming up, and I had told them the name, but I didn't tell them that it was happening. I didn't tell them that that the deal had been sealed. So that's how I know that Seth's motives were pure in this one. Seth, I'm not even going to try to intro this one. How much will you pay me to drive my tractor?
Okay, this I actually found a link off of a Reddit. Been a long time since I found anything through my Reddit searching, but this is an NPR article. This farmer, and you can say he's not a super farmer going to feed the world, but he has, I think, roughly 1,000 acres. So, he's a real farmer in San Luis Obispo along the central coast of California. And because of the software restriction inherent in his tractor, he is unable to repair his tractor if something goes down, because under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, it is illegal for him to change or attempt to circumvent the software. And so if a sensor that monitors his tractor and reports to the software goes out, he is out a day waiting for a John Deere rep to come out and diagnose it has a bad sensor, and if that rep has the part to repair it. And if you're a farmer, and it's one thing to say, oh, I've got this little garden out back because I like tomatoes or I want some fresh okra. If you're farming, you don't have a day to wait on your tractor being down. My grandpa wasn't a super farmer, but he farmed when he moved out in the country, maybe 15, 20 acres by himself. He didn't have time to set up if his tractor was down. So he had a spare tractor in the shed that he could just go and get. So, this is just companies being too restrictive because they can, because they take your money, because you have to have their equipment to do the job, and they're being stupid and they're dumping on consumers. And because it's one little consumer versus a giant company, and this is John Deere, an American company, you would know that just by their practices. What's he going to do? So,
and the last paragraph of the article I find telling says the Copyright Office is deliberating whether Tally, Alford, and other farmers can have the right to fix their tractors. They'll decide in October. If they grant the exemption, it will only last 3 years. Then farmers will have to argue for it all over again. So nobody is just saying that he's not breaking the law by trying to fix his tractor. That is a fact of law that is stated. They're trying to decide whether or not they can give a temporary exemption to the law to let you fix something you bought, you own. This isn't like software, like Microsoft Windows, where you license the software. You bought a piece of hardware that had software in it, and you were not allowed to upgrade the hardware because of the DRM on the software. This is what happens when lawmakers write laws about tech.
Because they don't know what they're talking about, and that's not bad, because I wouldn't want somebody in office who claimed to be an expert in every subject, because I mean, you would know that either their data from the future, a cyborg, or they're lying. But the problem is they refuse to acknowledge their inadequacy and refuse. Well, I'm sure somebody pays them a lot of money to make sure that these laws are addressed from every conceivable angle. And they've done studies. I just think it's ridiculous that this is what the future is coming to. And the future is here. And unfortunately, it's not a brave new world.
Yeah. And the thing is, he's not trying to reverse engineer the software. He's trying to repair a piece of hardware, but because of the laws that prevent him from reverse engineering the software, he can't fix the hardware on what's probably $250,000 piece of equipment.
Yeah, and the thing is, most people, at least in America, live in an urban or suburban setting, and the do-it-yourself mythos is by and large relegated to the history bin of America. If something breaks down, you take it to your mechanic or whatever. But if you're a farmer, you can't afford that. You have to know how to do it. And farmers of all generations up until this current one, if they're they fixed it because they were either a huge conglomerate with thousands and thousands of acres and dozens of stuff, and they could afford a mechanic. But for something like this, you can make a decent living off of 1,000 acres, but not if you have to have a mechanic on staff, not if you have to have a spare one so you can still work when this goes to the shop. This is what farmers and independent entrepreneurs do. They fix their stuff when it breaks. So he's not doing anything outside the normal accepted way his profession operates. He can no longer function the way his profession has functioned in America since before there was a nation called the United States of America.
And that's frustrating, but it's also the law of the land. You know what else is frustrating? If you're Acrobat or Adobe and you're trying to sell Flash and Google keeps shutting you down, that's also frustrating.
Yes, Google. Dude,
rough day for Seth.
I don't know what's going on, man. Google will hammer one more nail in Flash's coffin with a feature, man, that will soon prevent many Flash ads from displaying in the Chrome desktop. So what's going to happen? This is a feature that's in Chrome beta now. If you have an ad that is Flash based, and it comes up there in Chrome, it's going to be paused, and it'll say, "Hey, do you want to see this Flash based ad? Click here." So the next step will be, what Flash based ad? So and again, Flash is a resource hog, and in a lot of ways it's good to see it go, but yet there's still lots of people who know how to code in Flash, and there's lots of, if Flash is dead, all of those Flash ads that are out there are also dead, and who wants to lose the residual income on this ad they did 10 years ago? So but yeah, Google is saying we need to get rid of Flash, and they're putting their software where their mouth is.
It's funny. People were declaring that Flash is dead 5 years ago. Flash is not dead. Flash is dying. And the problem 5 years ago was there wasn't anything to replace it. HTML5 hadn't caught up yet. It has now. We no longer need Flash. I was a defender of Flash a long time ago because the people were wanting, Apple in particular, was wanting to just throw it out when there wasn't a replacement for it. Now there's a replacement for it. Now we just need to let Flash die. It's bulky, it's a resource hog, it's insecure, and even Adobe doesn't really like it anymore. They want to get rid of it too, but it's so embedded. It's become infrastructure in the system. Like if you go back in my show notes, probably 3 years back, you'll see that all the things that all the shows were embedded in a Flash player. I've since moved to an HTML5 player, but I didn't go back and update all my stuff back then. So there's all kinds of content on the web that you can't get to without Flash. So it's going to have to hang around for a long, long time. But we don't have to celebrate it. And Google, the only decision they've made is we're not going to autoplay Flash. We're not going to autoplay Flash. And ads count on autoplay so that you see the ad. So it's not a direct slam against advertisers. It's just saying we're going to let the choosers we're going to let the user decide whether or not they choose to allow Flash in their browser session. And I like that idea. I think that Google often bans Seth. So I think Google often wields the big ban hammer a little too heavily, but this time I think they got it right.
I have a great show title. We could call it the Toe Shiddle.
We can't talk today. It's catching. You've infected me.
Oh man, it's a great day to be alive.
So Flash, I'm ready for it to go, and I think, what's it going to take? Right, it's going to take for everything, the replacements of Flash, to be as good as Flash, and we're there, but still Flash lets you have more control over the computer outside the browser than does HTML5. HTML5 does a good job of restricting things to the browser, and nefarious types, and I would include ad companies in the nefarious category, don't want that. They want to control the computer, not the browser. So that's where this tension is coming from right now.
Yeah, those Flash super cookies that have been around for a while, you don't hear about HTML5 super cookies, at least not yet. So,
yeah. All right, and I'm curious, Seth, to what you have here, a different take on the Ashley Madison issue. And we have spent no time talking about this. This was, just to give you a bullet, it was essentially a website for high cost hookers.
No, not for high cost hookers, for married people to register and have affairs with other married people.
Oh, okay. See, I misunderstood what it was.
Of the website. So
my
I'm
information
not married and I'm not registered. So you know that. If I know that because I know weird, useless, trivial facts that we've established throughout the run of the show. So, but yes, this article found it on osnews.com and it references another article, but this is this person is posting an email from a married woman. And so again, I'm just going to read this because it's only like 3 little paragraphs and it brings a different perspective. And I'll talk about it a little bit more after I've read it. But it says, ever since I wrote on Thursday about the Ashley Madison hack and resulting reactions, I've heard from dozens of people who use the site. They offer a remarkably wide range of reasons for doing so. Posting below one email I received that I find particularly illuminating. So it gets even worse in this email. There are gay men and women in countries where being gay is punishable by death who are using this site to meet other gay men and women in secret. This hack will out them, possibly leading to their death. This hack and spreading the private information is just as bad as any other similar hacks. Despicable as it is, cheating is not a crime. And even if it were, do we really want to live in a world with mob justice? And yes, the parent company in this particular case isn't exactly of clear conscience, but that's no reason to throw the users under the bus or have them murdered by barbaric medieval governments. I know a lot of people like the world to be black and white because it's simple, easy to understand, and doesn't strain the brain. sadly for them, that's not how the world works. So, there's been a rush to criminalize or to shame the people who use this. And what the whole reason I'm including this story is one of the podcasts I subscribe to is TED Talks. And I just happened to have Friday on the way home listened to the one from Monica Lewinsky when she talked about just the effects of public shaming on her. And so, there is a rush to judgment that I know I have been guilty of many, many times in the past to say, oh, look at those bad people. Who cares that they got found out for this hack when, and we've actually had this conversation before where I was kind of on the other side of the fence. But do we want somebody who comes in and steals information? And then do we want to hero worship? I can't think of that good word. Because the antithesis of vilify, whatever that is. Do we want to the antithesis of vilify people? Venerate, there you go. The people who did this. And I don't think we do, because it's only going to lead to other hacks in the future. And you don't know the stories. And again, I'm not a cheating guy. So but I think that we're overlooking the crime because the people that were busted were easy to vilify because they were doing something bad.
So this falls away just in case, because I did such a poor job of explaining. What happened was a group who didn't like the fact that the Ashley Madison site existed and that people did what they did on it. They hacked the system, and by what they say, they didn't even hacked it. They just walked in the front door, digitally speaking. They grabbed information and they did a data dump, which included user accounts and passwords and outed people using the site. Now, this goes back to the conversation that we've had many times before against vigilantism. This is another case of digital vigilantism, and the white coat press likes to look at this and say, this is people doing despicable things. They got outed and they deserve what they got. My take on it is vigilantism is always bad. We cannot abide this kind of behavior. We certainly can't celebrate this kind of behavior, because what happens when somebody decides that, what you do is wrong, whatever that might be? What happens if they start going into churches because they're atheists and start hacking financial records and posting bank account and social security numbers of people because those idiot Christians don't deserve the privacy? The vigilantism always leads to bad things, and never should we celebrate doing a bad thing for what we believe is the right reason.
Yeah, and we've had the conversation, and this is another area where we don't know how to police the internet. We as a society don't know how to police the internet. Police officers do a pretty good job of policing the city, and if they don't do a good job, but maybe there's funding issues or whatever, but they know this is our city. We don't want certain events, rape, murder, theft, extortion. We don't want those events happening in this geographic area. But at the same time, if you're 2 feet outside the geographical area, we're probably going to stop you there too. But so we know kind of how to do that. And some places are better and more effective than other, but we don't know how to do that on a worldwide interconnected web. It truly is a web of information, where was this company incorporated? Where were the servers located? How were they attacked? Where were they attacked from? Was it software that they were using that was exploited? There's so many different just gray areas that there aren't good laws to address, or if there are, they're addressed very poorly. So in one sense, that's why in the same way there was vigilantism in the American Old West, because there was no law. People had to take law into their own hands. I don't agree with what they did, but I know there needs to be some type of rules and protection, because this time I would happen to agree that the group that was outed was probably bad. But at the same time, they have the freedom to do that, and I have to respect their freedom to do what they did, because otherwise, you know, there'll be nobody left to agree with me when my freedom gets violated. Right. So it's that kind of thing that it doesn't matter, you know, and this goes back to the conversation. These people had their accounts, they had username and passwords. And I saw an article that talked about the people with hard passwords, they weren't able to crack those passwords. But here's somebody who, by the very nature that they have registered for this site, you've learned a great deal about that person. And oh, true, you don't have their password, but you have their email address and you know they're a member of this site. So this is a sense where if they hadn't done this online or used an anonymous type site, they would still be safe. But because they registered for a site and they thought their information was secure, because the company they registered with did apparently a poor job of implementing security.
A non-existent job.
Yeah. I haven't gone into and read the details of how they claim the hack was done, but you know, they had good faith in the company they did business with to protect their information. And they did everything right on their end, everything they could do to verify their information was secure, but it turns out it wasn't secure. And now that they found out it's unsecure, it's impossible to go in and delete your account and pretend like you weren't there.
Right.
So
you can't unring the bell, and the bell has been rung. This next story is similar, but not really at all, where this is sort of the dark side of open source. When you produce something as open source, you trust other people to not rip off your code.
Yeah, and this company, GR Security, I personally haven't heard of them, but there's lots of stuff I haven't heard of. But they have a very good, high sterling reputation of securing the Linux kernel, you know, providing patches and on their products and stuff. So what happened was this company that produces a device that uses embedded Linux, they're using an old unsupported kernel, and they've taken GR Security's old unsupported platform and integrated it into that kernel. And they're using GR Security's name and logo and marketing goodwill that they've built up for being a sterling member in the internet security business. And they're saying, look, we have security, we're using GR Security. But he said he's kind of had enough with this industry, and the straw that broke the camel's back was a face-off in which he says a multi-billion-dollar corporation had made GR Security a critical component of their embedded platform. He doesn't have a problem with that, but they're using an old supported kernel and a several-year-old unsupported version of GR Security that they've modified. And they're modifying, but it's sort of like if you have a Windows 8 device, you're going back and finding something that worked with Windows XP and was top of the line for XP security, and you've kind of tweaked it a little bit to get it working Windows 8, and you're saying, see, we have this security company software. No, you have something that was good 20 years ago. Cutting edge 20 years ago is cutting room floor today.
But you're also violating the terms of the GPL. By rule, if you modify code, you have to release the modifications.
Right.
So there's two arguments here. One is that they've taken the code without acknowledging it, without supporting financially, and they're using an unsupported version. There is a supported version. There is good stuff available. This company isn't using the newest and greatest. So there's a reason to be upset about that. Another reason is that they have hacked the code, which they're allowed to do. It's open source. But by that same thing that allows them to hack the code, they have to publish those hacks. And they're not doing that. So they're violating both the spirit and the letter of the law. And apparently nobody at the company seems to care.
And they're making it worse because in the future, GR Security is only going to release their patches to their subscribers. So it's going to hurt the overall community because they're not going to be giving back to that community. They're only going to be giving back to their customers. So that's, you know, way to go, stupid idiot trying to wring a nickel out of a turnip. You've bleeped the rest of us.
And you know that there's some people who pay for it because it's open source. They can turn around and give it away or sell it. They have that right. But the people who are producing the code have decided no more. You got to pay to get it, which again, under the GPL, they have that right. So the only choice now, if you want a free version of the software, is to take their old code and start writing your own and releasing that. And there's a limited group. It's an esoteric set of skills. There's not a lot of people who know how to do that.
And most of them probably already work there.
Right. But if you're at a point now where if you want to learn how to do that, your only choice is to go get educated. Maybe our friends over at the linuxacademy.com can help you do that. Their job is to take you from being a computer user to a Linux administrator, not necessarily a kernel developer, but you got to start somewhere. So they do this by the way of step-by-step video courses that take you from, step-by-step, literally each step along the way. You've got a video guide. You've got downloadable PDFs that if you're a paper guy, you can follow that. They're time-coded with the thing, so you know exactly where to go back. There are practice quizzes when you're done so that you can make sure that you got it. There's a lesson browser and a learning module system that tracks where you are. So we've talked about this all the time. They have all these tools. It's a university in a box, essentially. It's all the tools that you would need to kickstart your new profession. And you can do that at the Linux Academy. One of my favorite things that I like to talk about is their lab platform that runs in Amazon's cloud services. You get up to 8 different distributions. You can run 4 of them at a time simultaneously, talking to each other in a private web or in a public web if you want to go that way. It's free to destroy things, and it's a safe place to learn by doing and by destroying. I know that in my life, many of the things I've learned came from having to repair that which I broke. Linux Academy gives you those tools. All these amazing tools, certified high quality content by third-party independent people with a vested interest in making sure that people actually know the things that they say they know. They've tested this content and said, yes, if you do these things and you finish these tests, you will know what you say you know. And you get started, and it goes beyond just Linux. They're doing a Ruby on Linux course right now, so you can learn Ruby programming. They have Amazon Web Services courses there. They have SQL database courses now. So they're expanding beyond. Linux is the platform, the foundation, but they're expanding beyond that. So you can literally just start your career today at linuxacademy.com. If you're a truck driver and you don't want to be a truck driver anymore, if you're a dishwasher and you don't want to be a dishwasher anymore, if you're a janitor and you don't want to be a janitor anymore, linuxacademy.com is a place where you can turn around right now today. Stop this podcast, go check out linuxacademy.com, because today you could start an entirely new life. And you can start that for as little as $25. Actually, not as little, as much as $25 a month. So that's the highest you'll pay. For a single month, $25. Check it out. See if you like it. If you do like it, you could, like anything else, the more you buy, the cheaper it is. So for 3 months, it's $65. You get a $10 discount right there. If you want to bite the bullet and buy for a year, $215 for a year, which is about $18 a month. But if you use the Linux, if you go to linuxacademy.com/everydaylinux, use that special URL, you get a lower price than even that. So Seth, you were saying?
Yeah, I was just, the Linux Academy is great. You could, depending on how much effort you put into it, I've used this line to describe them many times, and I'm stealing it from Stephen A. Smith. You get out what you put in. If you put the time in, you could get good enough to get a first level Linux job. If you're somebody who is already computer literate, you can surf YouTube, you know how to go into Facebook, and you can tweet, and you can throw some hashtags out, and you can already do stuff like that. In less than a month, you would have the skill set and level necessary to jump into an entry-level Linux professional. I just think that that's amazing. In college, in 1 month, you've gone over the syllabus and met like 10 times, and listen to your classmate try to take over every class the professor does. Whereas here, you're watching short videos. Hey, I didn't get that. Let me rewatch this one couple of minute video rather than sit through an entire lecture again. I just think they're great. And if you want to get serious in the computer field, dude, this is the best combination of value and bang for your buck. You get the most bang for the smallest buck of any site I've come across.
There you go. And as Seth likes to say, he doesn't just advertise for them, he gives them money every month.
Yep.
And we've got feedback from a couple of people, and Seth has said it's true. They have held a policy of what you start at, the price you start at, you never pay more than that. So early on, when they were just kind of begging for people to bang on it, you started out at a really low price. You're locked into that. So, get locked in now at the price at the $25 a month or 215 annually, and that won't go up because they're in today's market. They're doing themselves a disservice if they don't raise their prices. They're just doing too much to stay this cheap.
And really, we can't say they won't go up. We can only say, because Anthony hasn't told us that, we can only say in the past, and they've raised prices at least twice since I've joined, my price has stayed the same. Yeah. So again, I don't want to say it won't go up because the next time it might, but just in the past, they've grandfathered in the price you've paid.
That has been their policy in the past. All right, so moving on, Cyanogen Mod is no longer Cyanogen Mod. It's Cyanogen OS.
Yes, they have crossed over, and now you can actually get phones. There's a couple of companies out there that are releasing phones that come with Cyanogen OS. So, you don't have to root your phone, back it up and install this ROM and all that. You can just go buy a Cyanogen Mod phone. So, in Android, running along at 80 something percent of the total smartphone market of well over 1 billion devices, I think they're probably a little too big. So it'd be nice to see Cyanogen Mod. I don't have a problem with Android being the biggest. I just have a problem with any single operating system dominating that much market share.
So what's interesting though is OnePlus kind of was the first phone to release a phone with Cyanogen OS on it, but now they're no longer. They've transitioned to their own Oxygen OS, and I don't know, what the reasons for that are, but Cyanogen OS is now moving into other markets and leaving at least one behind. The OnePlus, the OnePlus 2 now comes with Oxygen OS, and seemingly will in the future. And I don't know what this means, but my wife, who has a OnePlus One, got an update recently, and it changed her default search engine from Chrome to from Google to Bing, and changed her homepage. So when she launched the Chrome app, it went to Bing. So I don't know what that means, but it definitely,
I think she was hacked.
It definitely means that Cyanogen or OnePlus One, OnePlus, excuse me, is moving. I don't know. They're pursuing other revenue options, I'm going to say.
Well, there was a feud. There's a feud between OnePlus and Cyanogen. I've only kind of skirted it. And part of it has to do because OnePlus was working with Cyanogen to launch, and they were going to be the first one with Cyanogen in this market, in this particular market. But Cyanogen partnered with someone else with that market before. So OnePlus said, well, if you're going to do that, we're not going to play with you anymore. We're just going to switch to another OS. So that's what happened there. It was a feud, because apparently the India subcontinent with its roughly almost 1 billion people isn't large enough for multiple smartphone OSs. So OnePlus is taking their hardware and jumping into bed, or kicking Cyanogen Mod out of bed, and using their own homegrown Android derivative called Oxygen OS.
All right, and next up, this one is kind of cool. We talked a while back about a project called Limbitless, that is an open source project that allows you, if you have some spare time and a 3D printer, to print prosthetic arms for kids. Well, the ante has been upped now with another company that is making really high quality, fully functional bionic limbs using 3D printers.
Yeah, Open Bionics from Bristol, England. They were originally funded from Indiegogo. And I got to tell you, I saw another TED Talk where this guy did a 15-minute talk. And while he was talking, he had a 3D printer print like this very intricate little ball about the size of a tennis ball with all kinds of sub layers and stuff. And it was a really, I tell you what, I'm digging the TED podcast. If you're not listening to that one, and the cool thing about that one is they're not that long. They're like, while he was talking in less than 20 minutes, it printed it out a lot higher quality than 3D printers that print layer after layer. Anyway, it was a really cool thing. But so Dextrous, they won this design contest, and Open Bionics is pretty cool. So it's a way to take a finished hand that would sell for less than $1,000 or 1,000 pounds, which is less than 1,600 American dollars, to get a prosthetic hand. I mean, that's insurance is probably going to be all over them to kind of get them out of business. That's too cheap for them. I just thought it was a cool story, and I hope you'll check it out. It's a CNET article. Very cool.
And they're good hands. They're functional hands. They're not just they're not biomimetic. They're not cosmetic. They don't look like normal hands, but it's unusual in my experience, which is very limited. But I do have a friend who makes these things, so I have some tangential experience with it. The hands that look like hands don't function well, and the hands that function well don't look like hands. And so both the Limitless and the Dextrous products don't look like hands. They're bright primary colors. They're 3D printed out of plastic, right? But they're highly functional. This picture on this website shows a kid solving a Rubik's Cube with his bionic hand. That I have to assume that amputees are more interested in being able to do things than looking good, looking like a real hand. So I'm really excited. And $2,000, which is roughly 1,000 pounds, 1,800 or so, is cheap. In fact, that's disposably cheap, really, in terms of bionics. It's mind-boggling what we can do. Again, using open source plans, open source products.
Yeah, and it takes like 40 hours to print. So you have the basic plans, they could kind of compare. And so say it takes 1 week to take those plans and modify them to your specs. Then in less than another week, you have 2 weeks from the time you're like, I want a prosthetic, to the time you're able to hold something in what was a non-existent hand. That's freaking amazing. Or flopping awesome, as somebody from Australia would say. And since the person who wrote this is from Australia, I'd throw in some Australian vernacular.
And this is nascent, right? This is in its infancy.
Right.
10 years from now, you'll leave the hospital after your injury with a bionic hand.
Yeah, it has 3D printers. The thing that slows you down is it takes 40 hours to print with the current model of 3D printers. And like I say, they already have models that could print this in less than an hour. It's just, you're talking the price of those printers are still
so it's really going to be what Lucas imagined, right? Luke Skywalker gets his hand cut off. They take him in, and this robot puts a new one on in like a few minutes. That's within the realm of our grasp now. That's amazing that we could actually be there in our lifetime.
I think there would have to be some developmental work, like, scans of the other hand and stuff before, and to tweak the plans. But I think from the time they started building it, it would take, you're talking by the end of next year, you could probably, I don't see, this is an amazing world we live in. There's no more Peg Leg Pete, doggone it. So, darn pirates.
It's pretty cool. And the last thing is we're going to end the show with a fizzle. Surprise, surprise, nobody wanted the Fire Phone.
Yeah, and Amazon is like saying, hey, all you people we paid to develop the Fire Phone, goodbye. They're kind of cleaning house and collapsing. They were planning a larger tablet that kind of got shelved, and they're kind of all of the, there isn't a separate team anymore. It's all combined into one hardware team. Basically, it's business as usual. Amazon took a shot at the Fire Phone. It didn't work. So they're moving on with their world. They aren't throwing good money after bad. And it's one of those things, sorry for the people that lost their job, but at the same time, it causes the stock to go up. So unfortunately, unless you're somebody who got fired, that's all you care about if you own Amazon stock is this good or bad for my investment. So yeah.
Market analyst Neil Mawson says the Fire Phone failed due to three main factors: terrible design, bad distribution, and weak marketing, which is surprising to me because Amazon excels at both marketing and distribution. How would they even do that?
You know, they don't. Mobile is its own beast, and they walked in overconfident that, hey, our distribution excellence is going to cause us to dominate this the way we dominate online shipping. And because they went in overconfident and stuck up with their superiority, they got their bohinies handed to them rather handedly in the smartphone market.
We said before the phone came out that we didn't think it would be anything. We said after the phone came out that we didn't. Once again, we're ahead of the curve. But then this was a softball right over the plate too.
Yeah, lots of people were ahead of this curve. Very shallow curve.
All right, I think I'm going to call that the news cycle for today, and we'll move on to some old news. If you got it, Seth, what happened this week in computer history?
Okay, August the 28th, 2004, Software Freedom Day is established and is firstly observed. And the Software Freedom Day is an annual worldwide celebration of free software. It is a public education effort with the aim of increasing awareness of free software and its virtues and encouraging its use. And they've since changed it to like the third Saturday of every month. And coincidentally, sometimes it is on National Talk Like a Pirate Day.
And tens of graybeards were excited by it. That's about it.
Yeah, so many snide remarks I want to say after that, but I'm just going to say, Software Freedom Day was this last week, and
you didn't see the huge media blitz about Software Freedom Day this last week? It was amazing. There were words, and it was on all the talk shows. Letterman did a top 10 about it. It was no.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was too busy being free to freedom.
All right. So keeping in the vein of history, what do you have for your slow show closing spectacular this week?
Okay, I came across this, and I love history. So this is just a YouTube channel, British Path, the things that wow. So I'll be quiet. You go here and they just have links. Of course, it's a YouTube channel there. Just historical stuff from the past. Just interesting. Like one of the things is there's a 1969 video from when Arnold Schwarzenegger wins Mr. Universe. You can see the Hindenburg disaster real footage. That's where the line, "Oh, the humanity," that's where that comes from, is the Hindenburg disaster. Just cool. And these aren't like historical recreations. This is the actual footage of stuff that happened from before most of us were born. And I'm sure there's something on here from before any of our listeners were born. I don't know that we have any super old people here, but if we do, hey, let us know that Sonny Owl watched everything on there and I remember every event like it was yesterday. If so, you rock. But there's an invention of television video from 1929. Just lots of cool stuff. And again, some of the videos are longer than others. Most of them are black and white. Just cool, neat things. This is one of the great things that YouTube can do, is preserve history. That a newsreel footage isn't going to survive the elements, but it's digitally archived and can be maintained forever. So
I remember in 93, 94, somewhere around then, I got a copy of Grolier's CD encyclopedia, and it was groundbreaking, right? It was a digital encyclopedia, searchable with multimedia on a CD, and one of the video clips there was that famous Hindenburg interview where the guy is saying it's terrible, oh, the humanity. And it was, on my 640 by 480 resolution screen, it was about a 3x5 index card size video, maybe even smaller than that, maybe business card size. So it was terrible on the CD, but the experience of it, first, for just being able to access that at my fingertips, was mind-boggling at the time. Now we don't think anything about just saying, "Hey, Google," or "Okay," or Siri. But at the time, I was already just kind of giddy with excitement about being able to do that. But I watched that video of the Hindenburg catch fire and burn, and a tear came to my eye and a catch in my throat as I felt the experience, the true pathos of that writer, that this man who was paid to communicate, right? He was a radio reporter, television reporter. His job is to find the right words at the right time. And he was so overtaken by emotion that he couldn't. All he could say was, "Oh, the humanity, it's terrible, it's terrible." And that, and I remember that very vividly. So when you mentioned that, I was immediately transported back to that crappy little apartment that my wife and I were in when we were first married, watching the Groliers Multimedia Encyclopedia, and the emotional hit that I felt when I saw that video for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, and like I say, the Hindenburg's just one of the things on there. So, they also have genuine disaster footage from Titanic disaster. I don't know what kind of footage that would be, but lots of stuff on here. And again, there's YouTube channels. This is just a cool one for history.
Yeah, and going back to the thing that I talked about, a fictional story that I'm reading about having to get humanity off the planet. How do you archive that, right? How do you send Google's data center into space if you need to? How do you archive YouTube? We have put everything, we put all our eggs in one digit, and it's fascinating now that if Google dies and takes YouTube with it, that treasure trove is gone, and it's frightening.
Yeah, I guess you would have to get a lot of disc and a few copies of Spin Right and just hope for the best.
All right, this is the part of the show where I tell you how you can talk back to us. Go to elementop.com, click the Contact Us button at the top of the page. That sends a nicely formatted email to my inbox that gets priority, and I will read it, I promise you. Or you can send an email to edl@elementop.com. That goes to all three of us, lest you think I am censoring your emails. Or if you would like to be right here in your own sweet voice here on this podcast, you can call 559-I-AM-OP, or use the podcast or use the voicemail widget at elementop.com. Leave us a voicemail on our Google Voice number, and we'll play it on the show, most likely. So as I've said so many times before, we do this show for you. We need your get better unless you tell us what you need, what you like, what you don't like. And don't be a troll about it, but if you don't like something, tell me. Seriously. If you do like something, tell everybody else. That's one of the best ways you can help us, other than supporting our sponsors, is spreading the word, letting people know. If our listenership grows tenfold, the only way that can happen is because you went out and told 10 people and everybody else did the same thing. And that would be amazing if you chose to do that. So we thank you for hanging out with us, Seth. As always, you were stellar. You brought the goods, and you made it so that I didn't actually have to do much work. And I appreciate that. And so for now, I'm going to say that ends of Everyday Linux.
Bye, y'all.
All right. And with that, I shall shut off the YouTube stream. See everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Subscribe below. I see guys doing that on YouTube. They always seem to know where the button is. Subscribe, like, or plus, or one. I don't even know what the options are, but share and stuff. See ya.